Well, you've touched a little bit on the pipeline and the significance of that. Brenda, since you're from the Arctic Slope area, talk about how it was working with the state during that time of oil exploration, the discovery that there was a huge find on the slope, and how that changed, how that impacted the negotiations for ANCSA.
I think when Prudhoe Bay was first discovered, remember Prudhoe Bay lies within the ancient boundaries that I described earlier. It was right next door to our villages. We hunted our caribou there. We hunted for our eider ducks, geese, trapped for foxes, polar bears, and that sort of thing. So Prudhoe Bay, from our traditional perspective, we own that land. We own that land. And I think, you know, the state of Alaska, however, had claim to that land before the land claims was settled. And the federal government had claimed title to lands within our ancient boundaries before the land claims was settled. And that posed a very serious conflict among our Inupiat people. When Prudhoe Bay was discovered, there were many strange people that started coming into our lands. Strange from our perspective, from a very traditional point of view. It was the Western American way of life, but keeping in mind that, you know, we did not have electricity at the time. We did not have natural gas. We did not have any cars when I was growing up. And our main mode of transportation was by dog team. So when I say that, you know, strange people were coming in, I really mean it, because we're so isolated until Prudhoe Bay was discovered. So then we did not know the oil industry. It seemed that the state government and the federal government, as well as the oil industry, it seemed that they had very little regard for us, and yet we had lived there, you know, for thousands and thousands of years, and many of our people were gripped with fear and concern about, you know, what's going to happen to our land, what's going to happen to our caribou. It was fear of the unknown, because we did not know this world that was coming into our land. And yet it received a lot of publicity in the newspapers. It was the largest oil discovery in the United States, right in our lands, our ancient lands. So when we heard about it, the news was quite overwhelming. And so in the meantime, there was the land claims issue going on, and then shortly after that, another really big item we heard about was that the oil industry wanted to build a Trans-Alaska pipeline to take the oil from our traditional lands across, I believe, 4 regions throughout the state: Arctic Slope, Ahtna, Doyon, and one other region. So we were joined by those regions, and they shared the same kind of concern we had, because it crossed our ancient boundaries. So anyway, I think the discovery of Prudhoe Bay, and at that time the proposal of the Alyeska pipeline, had horrendous, it was a huge negotiation tool for all of Alaska, because the land claims had not been settled, and they needed to settle that before taking any more of our lands. So from our perspective, the state of Alaska and the federal government at that time had taken so much of our lands before the settlement, and we did not know that. We did not know that until all these conflicts started occurring about, you know, how are all these development activities going to impact our subsistence, our only way of life. That's the only food we have. So I think there were a lot of I appreciate very much the united voice of our Alaskan Native people when that came to the table, as Francis said, and yesterday Marlene made reference to that really unified our and strengthened our position to settle the land claims.
It also was a source of revenue for the North Slope Borough.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned the North Slope Borough, because right after the land claims was passed, I'm always so very grateful to the to people like Eben Hobson, who used to work for Governor Egan as special assistant. He also served in the legislature, and one of very few from his generation who mastered the English and the Inupiaq language, and also really got to know the Western American way of life. So right after the land claims, he and Joe Persown, Eddie Hobson, and others from our villages had the foresight to establish what we call now a first-class home rule North Slope Borough that granted us, residents of the Arctic Slope, the state powers on planning and zoning, and that in turn gave us the power to issue permits to the oil industry who wanted to develop our lands. They, before developing any kind of lands, they had to get permits from us too, right along with the state of Alaska. So many of the permits that were issued by the North Slope Borough were conditional permits. Mm-hmm. And the conditions, some of them were to stop their activities, the oil industry is to stop their activities during the spawning season of our fish, mm-hmm. or during the migration of the caribou. And our people had expertise, very intelligent knowledge as to exactly when those seasons were to occur and when they were to be protected. So the state of Alaska also utilized our resources and the knowledge that we had when they issued permits. We began to establish a dialogue with the state government. We also, in the federal government as well, we also began some relationships and dialogues with the oil industry. And they assumed a very serious responsibility to regard us, and they developed a very healthy respect over a period of time, but it was a long process to educate them about our way of life.
It seems like it would have been kind of a hard road, because you're talking about dealing with executives of an oil company whose responsibility is a dividend and profit. And, here's these crazy native people saying, you can't drill where the fish are spawning. How did they react to that at first? I mean, it must have been really weird for them.
I'm just really thankful to God that the state of Alaska empowered us by state law and granted us a home rule North Slope Borough to be able to issue the permits. They had to listen to us because we were granted and empowered by the state law to listen to us. I know that it was very difficult for the oil industry to hear our side of the story, because we were a very strange culture to them, and they were very strange to us. So they, it took a long time to get to know each other, but I am so proud of Eben Hobson and other leaders, Oliver Levitt, Jacob Adams. They were on the North Slope Borough Assembly for many, many years, and they as Joe Persown would say, we have to learn the white man's tools, and I believe that we did that.
In the South Central area, Agnes, how difficult was it to keep Native people working together, or was it an easy process? It seems like there were a lot of people who had different ideas about how ANCSA should go, or, in some cases, some of the villages hadn't really worked with other villages before. Was it a hard process or not?
Truthfully, no. And while many of our villages were certainly not urban, you know, they had a flow with the seasons and shared. It was a lot of sharing. Sharing of food resources and sharing of, whenever there were outside threats, they would come together and work well together. It was not unheard of for, if there was a potential problem, it was not unheard of for people, mass groups, to travel by foot in the winter to a multi-day potlatch to discuss the issues. And it worked, and it happened. People worked well together during the good times and oftentimes during the bad times. But it was an incredible feeling that people trusted and shared, and that there was really, I can't remember any selfish times. And as our outreach expanded to other parts of Alaska, it was all the same. The giving was the same. And it's just phenomenal.